If you're watching the replay, go ahead and skip the countdown. If you're watching the replay, go ahead and skip the countdown. I see a few guys out there. Don't be shy. Say hi.
Yeah. Hey, time to get it started. No delay. Let's work. Wanna see you be an SEO expert. Paul Andre De Vera, steady dropping knowledge. Over 15 years in the game, so he knows all about it. Master the art of SEO. You will be amazed. Time to get your brand off page to on page. Dropping knowledge, legendary for sure. Whether you're just getting started or self-employed entrepreneur. Yeah, let's go. Subscribe to the SEO video show.
Hey, welcome to another episode of the SEO video show where SEO is alive and fun. My name is Paul Andre De Vera, aka Dre, and I curate SEO videos released within the past week into about 1-minute clips. My favorite part of the show is when I get to introduce my guest, and my guest this week is Kevin Indig, technical SEO and content expert. But before we get started, I want to say hi to everyone in chat. Fletcher, Freddie, Ernesto, Dory, Shar, Kevin, Shar, what's up everyone? And to everyone watching the replay, welcome. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. And now let's get on with the show.
This is Ted DiBiase, the $1 Million Man. Why are SEOs good at game shows? They know how to get quick answers.
Google posted a blog this week on how Google organizes information to find out what you're looking for. In this blog, there are a couple things they say their ranking systems consider, from words appear on the page to how fresh your content is, to determine what results are most relevant for the given search query, and how more than 10,000 search quality raters around the world help conduct hundreds of thousands of tests every year. I put the link to the search quality rater guidelines in the description, so be sure to check that out. Another post was on AMP, and it emphasizes on AMP's pages are open and exist well beyond Google. Publishers have control over the aspects of their AMP pages. AMP is not a ranking factor for Google search pages, and AMP is an open project led by many. Speaking of AMP, there's earlier this week, Bill Slawski talks about possibly moving his blog into AMP. Let's see why.
So AMP pages have a special icon they show next to them to show their AMP pages, right?
Yeah.
Now, Martin Splitt said that pages that pass Google's Web Core Vitals will have little icons next to them too.
Yes. Be like a plus sign.
So I'm still considering switching over my blog to AMP pages because I think that's the only way it's going to speed up fast enough to pass Web Core Vitals.
Pretty interesting stuff there. I mean, AMP is a pretty cool framework. I mean, if Google's saying to use it and is telling us to optimize it, and also actually giving us badges, kind of like icons next to your listing, what are your thoughts on that? Leave a comment below. I personally think it can increase CTR. It acts like a badge, and when I add emojis, and CTR tends to be a lot higher. There's a reason I add play buttons and emojis in my title to make my little organic listing stand out. Okay, how autocomplete works on Google search. Let's check this out.
Autocomplete is a feature within Google search designed to make it faster to complete searches you're beginning to type. We created it to help save people time, which it definitely does. On average, autocomplete reduces typing by about 25%. How it works at a very basic level is by looking at what you're starting to type in the search bar, sorting through trillions of past Google searches to find ones that include the letters you just typed, then displaying some of the most common ones. So what you see in autocomplete are predictions based on lots of data about how people search. That's why the first queries you typically see are your own past searches, because data tell us users tend to repeat them. Those predictions are indicated by a clock icon, and you can delete them right in the search bar, or you can visit your Google account page.
This reminded me of a cool trick mentioned by Steve Toth called keyword stretching, where you can add an asterisk in between your search query words to get more variations of a suggested search. This is awesome when you're looking for topics to write about. Check out episode 9 of the SEO video show to learn a little more. Did you know Google treats URLs with and without trailing slashes differently? Let's listen in.
So by default, we wouldn't see the trailing slash or not trailing slash as the same URL. it is something that technically we would consider one to be kind of the root of a folder and the other a file name within the higher level folder. So we wouldn't by default try to equate those. If we crawl them and we see the same content, then we pick them up and we try to use them for canonicalization. So that's something that then kind of happens as a second step. And depending on the way that you have the site verified in Search Console, if you just have like that subdirectory verified and the URL is the one without the trailing slash, then we would assume that URL is no longer a part of that site if you kind of focus on the subdirectory.
So be sure to check out your input in Google Search Console on how you input your websites and pages. Former Salesforce chief scientist on TechCrunch announces a new search engine to take on Google called U.com. It's based on trusted search, they say. Click trust, not clickbait. Get early access and join the raffle with the link in the description below. On Authority Hacker show, Kyle Roof goes over an interesting way to relate to related searches in Google to create content. Let's check it out.
Is how to create the most relevant page possible. And a trick or a technique that I've run into is that search for your primary keyword, what you're going to write this page about, and then scroll to the bottom, look at the related keywords. Pick the one you like the best. And by the best, I mean the direction you want this page to go, or the one might be most relevant to what you're trying to do. So you choose that one. Click on that one, scroll to the bottom of that one, and look at their related searches. So now you have two sets of related searches, one for the primary and one for your lead H2, or your lead secondary keyword. Find the terms that match between these two. You'll probably find 3 or 4, maybe 3. Those then become the H2s on your page, the sections that you're going to do on your page. From there, the ones that match, click one more time and go to their related searches, and then that's what you're going to fill in content-wise in each of those sections. So those are the points you're going to hit as you're writing, as you're filling out those paragraph sections. You will end up with the most semantically related page ever, and it has the best opportunity to rank for the most amount of keywords, and you didn't have to do any magic. You didn't have to do any special keyword research or need a special tool. You let Google show you what to write.
Interesting stuff there. That's a pretty cool trick and a cool little nugget. What are your thoughts on link exchanges? Chris Brooks at the SEO Mastery Summit explains when it is a good time to do a link exchange. Let's listen in.
If you look at Google's page on link schemes, what they say is don't do excessive link exchanges. And so my number for that is, like, if you're linking, well, if a really authoritative link has linked to you at some point, and a year later you think they're the perfect resource, like, I wouldn't hesitate to link to them, even though it's a reciprocal link in this case. You have sort of done a link swap, it's just unintentional. So I would never hesitate to do that as long as it's an authoritative site. And if you've built a relationship with a site in your niche and it's an authoritative site, I definitely don't think it's going to hurt you to do a link exchange with them every once in a while. Like, if you did a link exchange every couple of months, I think you might get some marginal benefit from that, and I don't think it will hurt you.
There you go, guys. Just don't do things excessively and just don't abuse things. I mean, Google may put out some guidelines. It's just, hey, take it for a grain of salt and just don't abuse things. A study was done on getting accurate keyword data by Lee Witcher on the SEO Fight Club show this past week. This is very interesting. Check this out.
Plumbing, is one of those things that ought to correlate somewhat with population. And I understand there can be differences in cities based on the age of the homes and things like that. Time of the year can also come into play. But, if we look at it, something like this ought to correlate with population. So if we look at the correlation between the search volume for the top 1,000 US cities and the population, the correlation is 0.58, which is a big number with a data set this large. So, there is a strong relationship there. It's just off on a little city by city basis. So I thought, well, why don't we just use this and correct the data, get a better estimate just using, what is the average across all cities. So if you go to the next slide, Ted. So you take the top 1,000 cities, you run your keyword planner data for that, and then you just take the total volume for all 1,000 cities, the total population, and you find out it's just over 3 searches monthly for every 1,000 residents. So you can take that multiplier then and apply it to the data. So if we go to the next slide, you can see what it looks like. So Los Angeles should have about 11,000 searches a month rather than the 2,400 that's being reported. That makes more sense. If you look across all the cities, it should look a little bit more like this.
So check this out. I mean, keyword data tools will tell you, or like tell you search volume and not be as accurate, but this formula that Lee put together is pretty interesting and it makes a lot of sense. Speaking of interesting and out of the box thinking, my guest today does a lot of research himself. This brings me to my favorite part of the show. I encourage you to ask questions in the chat during our conversation. And let me go ahead and clear this up here. Kevin has helped companies acquire 100 million users over the last 10 years. One of the best SEO experts according to Search Engine Journal. He is a startup mentor at the German accelerator. He worked with including brands including eBay, Bosch, Samsung, Dailymotion, Pinterest, Columbia, UBS, and many others. He previously led the SEO at Search Metrics, Atlassian, GT Crowd, and is the new director of SEO at Shopify. Please welcome Kevin Indig. Kevin, wow. my man, Kevin, how are you today?
Oh, I'm blown away by that intro, man. That was like a legit cinematic movie trailer. Oh, thanks for that, Trey. It's awesome and beyond. Thank you.
Of course. I mean, first off, congrats on the new gig. I mean, Shopify, that's a cool gig. I mean, there's so much to do there too, right? I mean, tell me a little more about it. How did this come about? And what was the process? Can you tell us a little more about it?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'm on day 5, so still pretty young, pretty new to everything, still soaking it up, still learning. But it was a pretty unique opportunity. I think that position was open for a little bit, and to be honest, I was very happy at G2. I was not looking for a different gig. We're having great success, really doing our thing. But then, I got connected to Luke, who's the VP of Growth, formerly led growth at Facebook and Google and TripAdvisor, and they have an absolutely stunning team. It's a fantastic company, and it's just one of these offers and opportunities that you really can't pass. So I'm, 5 days in, I'm like in heaven, man. It's amazing.
Yeah, no, getting a position within great companies like Shopify. I mean, it looks like that it's your network that was able to help you, make the connection there, right? I mean, it wasn't like you were looking, and it's like, oh wow, how did not anyone else know about this, or knew about the position? But again, it is really hard when it comes to big brands and even enterprise SEO. What was your I guess your interview process like? Because I mean, did you have to actually go in person or do anything like that? How was that?
Yeah, luckily we were able to do everything remote, which helps a ton. And it's true, a strong network really helped. I was connected by a former mentor of mine. I'm not going to name the person. I'm not sure if they're comfortable with that or not, but it was really one of these, deep personal connections. And during the interview process, I spoke to tons of current peers and other people in the company, amongst others, Morgan Brown, who's very well known in the space as well, and he leads growth marketing at Shopify. And so yeah, we had a couple of conversations, and I think we were are very aligned on how we see SEO, how we see the opportunity, how we want to go after those opportunities, and I think that's what eventually did the trick, And on my side, I think, to be honest, I don't think there were a lot of companies that could have really poached me away from G2. Again, loved my team there, loved everyone, fantastic company. I learned so incredibly much, a lot of which I can't talk about at the moment, but maybe in a couple of years, when it doesn't matter that much anymore. But at the end of the day, I saw that opportunity. I thought that this would be a fantastic challenge for me to take on and really help me, bring me closer to my mission and to my goals. So made that call.
Mentors and network, check that out. I mean, that can lead to the next journey of your career, whether it's SEO, digital marketing, anything like that. Mentors and your network. Okay, think of, I want to pick up off of there, like every loss is also an opportunity. This is a quote I read on your blog. Tell me a little more and tell our audience about what happened here. Cause I was a big follower also of, the Tech Bound podcast. And also, like watching your channel, we feature clips here on the SEO video show. And I was wondering what happened. I couldn't grab any much more clips. So tell me a little more about this quote here.
Well, first of all, thanks for featuring the clips and giving me some shout outs. Very much appreciated. So one of the hard asks of joining Shopify was to not continue my paid newsletter. TechBound was my paid newsletter until very recently, and the reason was kind of to not charge for knowledge that I learned on Shopify. So generally, Shopify, one of the philosophies of Shopify is that they're very, very open with knowledge internally, but they're very, very careful and sensitive to bring in knowledge outside of the company. And there was a bit of a concern that, by me charging for knowledge, that there would be a disconnection between Shopify's values and my values. And, even though at first I was a bit hesitant to do that, in the end, I comply with that. I agree with that. And I think that opens up other opportunities for me, So first of all, TechBound podcast is going to continue. I have a lot more fantastic guests in the pipeline. I'm going to churn out more videos. And I'm going to continue writing. However, I'm not going to publish a newsletter 3 times a week anymore. That was the previous paid offering. So now it's going to be one weekly newsletter. It's called Growth Memo. It still has the spirit of TechBound living on, but it's a little less SEO focused. It has SEO components, but it also takes into account the growth side of things. I'm now part of the growth team at Shopify, and so the newsletter is really about some principles, tactics, and strategies that apply to growth. And I comment on recent things that happened, right? So one example is Google charging for Google Drive storage, right? There's a strategy behind it, a company strategy. It's not just that they want to make money, but I write a little bit about the purpose of freemium and what it means to companies, So it's things like that. So I think, I take the best out of what I learned resonates well with my audience from TechBound. I put it into a free offering. I'll continue to churn out videos and podcasts, all that kind of stuff. It's just that I'm not going to provide a paid offering in the future anymore, which, that's what I meant with the quote, which at the end of the day allows me to do other great things and to put more time into creating really good content.
Love it. I love that quote. Okay, Kevin, I want to take it back. Let's take it way back into the time when, how did you get into SEO? I mean, you've been part of all these great companies, especially a bunch of great tech companies. I mean, we're in the same space. I've been in the tech industry here in the Bay Area of doing SEO. And I'm curious, how long ago and how did you get into SEO?
Yeah, man. For me, it started about... So I earned money for roughly 10 years in SEO. I started with computer games when I was a teenager. Was a really nerdy kid, and took apart computers to tune them to play the newest computer games, all that kind of stuff. And when broadband came out, that was in Germany. So I was born and raised in Germany, by the way. When broadband came out in Germany, we started to play online, my friends and me, and to apply for online tournaments for games, we needed a website. And I became the guy to figure out how to make a website. So taught myself HTML and CSS and Photoshop, and I built these really crappy websites, horrible, really terrible websites. But it led me on the path of SEO, and I wondered, at some point, where do people come from who visit our site? And then I understood that there's something like a search engine, and I pieced it together from there. And then I taught some of that myself, but I really learned SEO when I started as a trainee in an agency. And that agency was very, very focused on big enterprise clients. So I was lucky to learn on the job and learn from very, very big companies that have different SEO needs than, say, like a car shop around the corner or something like that. So that's how I got into it.
Got it. Okay, so like, I mean, so you're pretty much self-taught. Like, were you just like reading blogs or reading books or like doing a lot of tests yourself? How did you actually, get the skill, the craft down?
Man, in the very beginning, I just read a ton online, like forums, blogs, and that is one of the reasons for why I'm very outgoing with my stuff. Because back then, that's what really helped me. People sharing, and I think that's really what advances SEO and also growth. It's people sharing what they learned, and so I was, my personality is very input driven. Like I'm a big taker. I can really immerse myself in a topic and really like try to soak up everything that there is in terms of knowledge when it comes to understanding a problem or a topic. And that's what I did as a teenager. I was awake at 3 a.m. and just reading online forums and just like getting my mind blown by some of the people who put stuff out there. And then later on, again, I learned from the traineeship hands-on. I had mentors along the way. And then also going to SEO conferences and meetups and any other type of events also greatly helped me.
Mentors has come up a lot, in our conversation here, and I'm curious because you're actually a mentor yourself at the German Accelerator. Tell us more about that. Like, how can someone even be part of? Is this something that's ongoing right now? Are you still mentoring there? Tell us more.
Yeah. Still mentoring there a bit. And so the German Accelerator is the official startup program of the German government. So they help startups expand into the US. And one of the most common challenges is to define a marketing strategy or a go-to-market strategy for German companies, because the markets are different, and the culture is different and things work a bit differently. So that's where I come in. I'm a mentor for specifically marketing, digital marketing, growth, that area of the internet. And I help startups get their strategies right, look at the right numbers, hire people, all that kind of stuff. Now that's like, we're speaking about, a couple hours a month, maybe, it's more like it's a side gig, side hustle. I maybe wouldn't call it a hustle. It's more like an engagement. The startup community is near and dear to my heart. And it's nice to see some startups accelerate from Germany, my home country, but I also learn a lot in the making. We have a lot of very techy startups in the robotics space, AI space, so they come up with really cool stuff and cool technology, and so I can keep an ear to the floor as well there.
Yeah, what a way to pay it forward. That's awesome. Especially learning and having you as a mentor, I feel is awesome. I think there's also you actually do two parts, like you focus on two parts of SEO. You do a lot of technical and you also do a lot of content. That's pretty two different parts of the brain. Like, so like, which part do you actually enjoy more? Like, do you like technical content?
That's a really good question. See, my strength and one thing that I truly enjoy is building systems, I would say. And at first, it sounds a bit more applicable to technical SEO because it's more used for really large sites, and you can build systems easier or scale your impact easier on a large site. But even when it comes to something like content, I love, I like to create playbooks or see how to repeat best practices, and that's a system in itself, how to measure the success of content. So I think that's what it all comes down to and what it comes back to. And content is also challenging in a certain way. So you see that image here in my background. That's a brain with two halves. The one half is analytical, the other half is creative. And I think, I have that on my wall because that's how I would see my brain as well. I have these really analytical spurs, and then I also have a very creative side. I grew up playing some music and producing my own music. I was DJ for many years. But then on the other side, I love spreadsheets and numbers. So it's hard to say which one I enjoy more. I'm probably a weirdly twisted person.
So you're a DJ. That's interesting too, because I feel like, even a lot of SEOs that I speak to, even myself, I was a party promoter, and we have DJs, singers, musicians. I think that's a part of the SEO community where like that entertainment side is in us. Did you, like, when you were a DJ, did you somehow use SEO to promote yourself there, or was this way before you were into the SEO game?
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because it's true. I know a lot of people who there's like an absurdly high amount of DJs in the SEO community, or like former DJs, right? I'm not spitting anymore, but that was a bit before my SEO career, and I got to this point where I I decided for myself that this was going to be more of a hobby and a side thing rather than something I really wanted to focus on. I enjoyed that for many years. I paid a lot in college and I earned some really good money. So I was a club DJ. I was in the club Thursdays, Fridays, Saturdays, and until early in the morning, and I loved it. But it came to a point where it didn't make sense, and then it interfered with my career as well. So I put it aside, but didn't use much SEO at the time. I maybe should have. But it was a fantastic experience, in many different ways. One of them is just like see how people react.
Mm-hmm.
So as a DJ, if you want to be good in the club, you have to develop like a feeling for what makes people move. And it's not always the same thing. Sure, sometimes you have the hits, but back then when I played, it wasn't just heart rotation. It wasn't just all about the hits all the time. So you want to like develop an eye for, there's like a group starting to move over there. So maybe I'm on the right track here. Or, like tonight it's like the club is pretty cold. It's really hard to get people to move. So let's see what we can do here. And I think that's like a feeling that I kept kind of throughout my career. And now I don't have that immediate crowd in front of me, but I still have something like user engagement signals or another way to like test and see how people react. Even when it comes to my own content, and you see how it spreads over social or on Twitter or in SparkToro, like you start to develop a feeling for what works and for what people like. And I think that's like a meta skill that I developed in the club. I love that.
Oh yeah, rocking in the club. Okay, that brings me to now let's talk about some more SEO here. Let's this past I think maybe a couple weeks ago, you were a part of the SEM Rush 5-hour technical webinar. I mean, that was a long thing. I had to just have play in the background sometimes, but when you came on, I had to pay attention here, and I was curious when you brought up server logs. I mean, this is something I actually don't even touch. And I'm curious, what's the difference between observing and looking at server logs and Screaming Frog and stuff that you get from Google Search Console? What are the benefits of, let's say, looking into server logs?
Yeah, well, thanks for bringing that up, and thanks for tuning in. Log files are really interesting. So log files are something like a source of truth when it comes to understanding how Google crawls through a site. I would say it's kind of the best way to understand what Google really crawls and how often and to what extent Google understands your site. And so there are a couple of interesting things to look at. In 2018, I presented this Tipper model at the Tech SEO Boost conference in Boston. And the Tipper model, the idea of Tipper, so it stands for True Internal Page Rank. And so the whole idea of Tipper came up at Atlassian, where we dealt with really big sites and we wanted to better understand what moves the needle, what scalable systems can we build. And so it's interesting because internal linking is often seen in isolation. But reality is when we think about something like PageRank, it actually flows from site to site, but also from page to page on a site. So when you start to turn and twist the knobs when it comes to internal linking and optimize internal linking, one way to monitor and understand whether you're successful are log files, because you will see that Google starts to crawl pages more often than it used to maybe crawl less before you made the change to your internal linking structure. So first, I think it's more helpful for larger sites. If you have, say, under 1,000 pages or maybe even under 10,000 pages, I don't think you will get something meaningful out of log files because Google will dedicate enough crawl resources to your site. When it comes to huge sites, I worked at Dailymotion, for example, where we had 300 million indexed pages. We could not even get a full download of our server log files because there was so much. We could not even crawl our whole site. So then it becomes a completely different problem. But the point is, for larger sites, it can really help you find weaknesses of your internal linking structure that lead to Google maybe not crawling all your content as much or as well as you would hope. Or it can also help you understand when you, for example, have issues with Googlebot rendering your site. There are other ways to find that out as well, but there are many benefits of using log files when it comes to optimization, usually more tied to larger sites. And then they also often face a challenge to actually get the log files, right? A lot of companies don't store them, or a lot of companies don't have easy access to them. So it's like a niche lever, I would say, but can be very, very powerful.
Yeah, I was curious about that. I was like, how do you just go to your dev team and say, "Hey, can you export the log files for me?" I mean, is it that easy? Like, has it been that easy for you, like with you, or is like what's kind of the process for requesting these log files?
Yeah, it's different from company to company because there are different infrastructures and architectures. So in many cases, log files are tracked in a tool like Splunk, for example, or you can store them in something like Amazon AWS in an S3 bucket. But you can also do something. There's some workarounds now. So one example is Ryte. RYTE, that's an SEO tool, and they offer a product that's called Botlogs. And Botlogs is a simple pixel you can put on your site, and it will track all the times that Google comes to your site. So it's basically replacement for for server logs. And I think there are a couple of other products that offer that as well. So there are workarounds, but in pretty much every case, you either have to work with your developer team or engineering team, with your backend team, to setting server log files storing up, or they have done that in the past and you access to the storage.
There you go. Nice little knowledge bomb there on the tools to use, because I was curious, like, okay, what do you do with these files once you get them? But you just mentioned it. Thank you for that. Okay, let's see here. I want to go into now a little more on what you just mentioned, the tipper. What is a tipper? You said it's internal ranking, but like, how is that calculated? Like, and how can someone quickly find these pages by using your tipper strategy?
Yeah. So tipper, the whole idea was the following, okay? Usually when you want to understand your internal linking structure better, when you want to understand which pages are internally linked a lot and which are not internally linked a lot, you would use a tool like Screaming Frog or Botify or Deep Crawl or OnCrawl, and you would crawl your site, and those tools would give you something like an internal page rank, right? They would apply a very simple PageRank formula, or maybe sometimes a bit more sophisticated PageRank formula, to that crawl based on your internal links, and then give you a model of which pages are underlinked or linked enough. And underlinked is also a very theoretical concept, because you have to set the threshold yourself, right? Like, there's no magical number of links that an internal page should get. At least one, we can say, right? But then should be 11 or 12. It depends. And what this depends on is how PageRank actually flows through your site, right? So typically homepage has the highest PageRank, very easily accessible for Google. And then the deeper buried a page is, meaning the more clicks that it takes from the homepage to get to that page, the lower its PageRank. However, that is not true. That is only true in theory. So in practice, what happens is that these pages also get external backlinks. So what could happen is that a page is like 8 or 10 clicks away from the homepage, but gets a really strong external backlink. And that means that your internal PageRank model is inaccurate. So you need, when you look at kind of PageRank, you always need to take external backlinks into account. So besides crawling your page, you also want to take a link tool like Ahrefs or Majestics or Cup or whatever else you have. You want to take that into account. You want to get an export of all the links coming to the pages on your site, and then match that with your internal PageRank model. And when you do that, and I wrote about this on my blog, so there's like a step-by-step manual. When you do that, you get an accurate idea of which of your pages actually need more external or internal backlinks to rank higher.
Nice knowledge bomb there. Okay, guys, I actually put a link to more about this to the SlideShare presentation that Kevin put together. So check that out. It's very, very interesting. And okay, let's see here. You were just at G2Cut. I know you said you can't really mention or talk about certain things there, but I'm in the tech space, and you guys are always the guys that like everyone refers to as the SEO. You or Capture is like, it's these directory sites that are always ranking for our software, like whether it's Workday, Oracle, SAP. It's like you guys are always on there. I'm curious, like, I mean, can you give us a high-level strategy you guys were doing there? I mean, was it more just the directories? Because I know I didn't realize this, but you guys actually had another at G2 like learn.g2.com, right? And I'm curious, like, so, like, what did you leave both, like the .com and learn, the subdirectory and the whole content strategy? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely, sure. So, quick answer: yes. I led both teams and was responsible for all the subdomains or at G2 Crowd, and it really comes back to the core of the strategy. So it was a two-pronged strategy, right? And I'm saying that because the Learn Hub, as we call it, really demands a content marketing strategy, right? So that's where we had writers or content marketers creating really high quality content. We had a guest posting program. And the whole idea was to address the users as early as possible in the user journey, right? So the marketplace, which lives on www.g2.com, those pages they target a very specific user intent, right? So we have what we call compare pages, where we can compare one software tool with the other, but that's specifically for comparisons, as the name says. We also have alternatives pages, which help people find alternatives to a software solution. So on a marketplace, you have very predefined user intents for different page types. And on the content marketing side, you can basically target whatever you want, right? You can basically create content for whatever you want. So that's why we had a two-pronged strategy. I basically at the end had a technical SEO team and a content marketing team. I went through several iterations of structuring my teams, and I ended up with those two, or I landed on these two, better said. They were, the content marketing team responsible for the Learn Hub, the technical SEO team more responsible for the marketplace. Of course, there's some overlap. And then when it comes to the marketplace optimization, it's really all about these systems, about these scalable tactics, right? And it can be something very simple as things you can do with your title tag. Like to be honest, like a lot of title tags are completely underutilized. There are a lot more like hacks and tricks and things you can do with them. Then another big lever is schema, of course. But then it also comes to the content and managing content quality, which is especially tricky for a user-generated content site. So internal linking is a big factor and all that. So it was a whole list of, or a whole box of tools that we could pull from. And then on the content marketing side, it was like a completely different game. It's much more about, like writing and creating good content and making sure you get high quality guest posts and not just, like rundown things. So I had a fantastic team that managed every step of those processes that worked together. And, like to be honest, man, at G2, sure, I gave some ideas and some input, but I think my biggest job was really to make the team successful, because that's such great talent and so many smart people that, at that point, your job is not to have an even better idea than them, but it's much more to like, how can I help them be successful? Like, how can I enable them?
Systems and processes. This has come up many times in our world of SEO, and my audience here is a lot of enterprise marketers. So you enterprise SEOs, listen to what Kevin's saying here. He just gave you a little insight onto the G2 Crowd content strategy. Okay, let's see here. Okay, I want to go a little more and kind of close off on the topic of organic growth. You've talked about organic growth, and within your, I believe in the last post you posted on Search Engine Journal or Search Engine Land, one of the sites, and I like this concept. This is something I've always like talking about. I think SEO is even moving more to this organic growth type of movement, and I want to hear it from you, because you're the only other person that was actually talking about this. And what's the concept of your organic growth?
Thanks, Trey. Thanks for asking me that question, because I'm super excited about that right now, super curious and pumped about this content. And so, I was originally a bit hesitant to give it that name, or a name that people are unfamiliar with, because I don't want to just try to reinvent the wheel, or try to come up with a fancy name for something that everybody has been doing all the time anyway. However, what I realized in my work is that for a certain type of sites, especially these large sites, your approach to SEO is completely different than what you usually read on the internet about, or on blogs about. No offense to that. That's all important. Don't get me wrong. But when you, for example, optimize a site like Facebook, or like G2, or like Shopify, or like Atlassian, or whatever else you have, you don't apply the same principles and tactics and strategies, right? You don't go out and do keyword research and then optimize a page or something like that. You optimize at scale. you test, right? You run A/B testing. You do things like server log file monitoring, right? You deal with internationalization, with repeatable systems, and so that is a different dimension of SEO that, at least to my definition, and that's why I call it organic growth. And I have a longer blog article in the making that tries to outline all the different things that fall into organic growth. But at the end of the day, it's really applying a growth mindset to SEO. And when I say a growth mindset, it's not there are things that are also called growth mindset, right? Like, for example, how you see your personal development, that can be growth mindset. No, what I mean is tactics and principles and strategies from what used to be growth marketing, or used to be called growth hacking. And you're not allowed to say growth hack anymore, because people will immediately think that you try to sell them snake oil and shady tactics. That's not the point. It's really about applying the scientific method to SEO, right? It's the test, measure, learn cycle, and constantly refining that. And it's looking for impactful levers, right? Like, what is one thing that I can do on a site that scales, right? That has a compounding effect over time. And just optimizing a single title, for example, doesn't do that. But when you look at at like a SEMrush or Ahrefs or whatever SEO tool you have, and you look at the visibility or the traffic that goes to G2 from organic, you'll see what that looks like, where the site is really going through the roof right now. And that's the result of applying these organic growth tactics and strategies and principles over time. So that's how I would define it.
Damn! Man, that was some answer. I swear, that was like, I'm totally like with this concept too. It's something like I have always like thought about. It's like, there's always these growth manager, growth marketing manager positions, but it's like, there has to be an organic growth. And I totally love that answer. I'm going to be taking some quotes from that. I'm going to transcribe that and get that ranking. All right, Kevin. All right, let's see here. Anyone in chat, if you have any questions before I ask the last question that I ask all my SEO professionals, please go ahead and ask so we can go back to if you have any questions for Kevin. But Kevin, I asked this question to all my SEO professionals that I bring here on the show is, what is that one tip or advice that you can give to anyone that's trying to get into the SEO industry?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. And my answer is to get hands-on experience. Set up your own blog, or maybe it can be WordPress blog or Ghost blog or whatever you have, or a Shopify store, get into drop shipping, whatever. Get some practical experience and start your own project that you can experiment with, that you can run tests with. Nothing, especially in SEO, nothing beats practical experience. So find a way to get that. Maybe it's even like a relative who has a site or a store or shop or whatever, but seek for a way to quickly gain hands-on experience. See what happens when you do something, right? Like you change your title tag and then look at what happens. Do you get more traffic? Do you increase rankings? That will get you on the right path to look at numbers, to really get hands-on practice, because SEO moves very, very fast and changes very quickly. So what you read today could be outdated tomorrow. And if you get hands-on experience, you start to get that feeling that I talked about before, like when you're in the club, right? Or when you're looking at your content on social, like what's the response, right? Like always look for the response, and practical experience with a personal project is a good way to get there.
You bet. Okay, I didn't see anything come in, so I want to go ahead and let everyone know, how can anyone get a hold of you? Where's the best place? I know you're pretty big on, how people can get a hold of you.
Thanks, man. Thanks. So you can find me on Twitter on Kevin_Indig.com. I love those blendeds, man. Those are amazing, them animations. So Twitter, LinkedIn, of course. And then I also have a personal website. It's currently being redesigned, so excuse the ugliness, but it's kevin-indig.com. You find all my blog and growth memo and everything we talked about before.
All right. Thank you, Kevin. Can you please hold on before I sign off real quick? Let me see here. Thank you. All right, guys, that concludes another episode of the SEO Video Show. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. And I'll see you next week.
Thank you for watching. watching. Hope you come back next week. Make sure to subscribe. You don't want to miss a thing. Hope you learn something new, cause the vibe is incredible. From the special SEO professionals, SEO video show, let's work. Want to see you be an SEO expert. Paul Andre DeVera helping you step it up. No delay right now, time to level up. Hey, thank you so much for watching. Make sure to subscribe. Woo!